today somebody told me about sitting under a tree, which I hope some of you do sometimes. And they were sitting under a tree, and I'll alter some of the details, mess up some of the details of this story, but in some sequence they saw two animals. One was a lizard sitting on their meditation cushion after they walked away and came back. And usually the lizards scurry away, but this one was like in samadhi. And then even when this person got really close to it, and then when this person got close to it, it lifted up its neck, and it was blue, like the blue-necked one. And then they sat down, and then it left. And then they were meditating, and they heard some crinkling behind them, and thought maybe that's a cute little chipmunk. And they looked a little bit, and it was a big rattlesnake, slowly slithering behind, peacefully. So if you happen to be meditating and you hear a soft crinkling, don't reach for it. Just look, and then run away, like they did. But you all signed your release waiver, right? Did you all sign that? Okay, good. Arvid, did you sign one? No, you should sign one. You were out there working. Insurance here. Yeah, we'll compost you. Yes. So, is this still working? Yes. So I wanted to, I don't really know what I'm going to talk about tonight, as usual. In fact, but I will mention a little bit more about the 5 aggregates and not clinging, as usual. But if anyone... It really is insanely repetitive in some sense, but it's so beautiful in another sense. In the lived practice of it, it's very beautiful. There's in Zen, some people paint these classic circles called an enzo, and it's a very basic shape. Anyone can make it, but the idea is it's how you make it that matters. And some master painters will make many, many circles. And I once visited one of these master painters. His name's Kaz Tanahashi, who translated this Heart Sutra, and spent the day with him at his house in Berkeley, and we did different things. And the first thing we did was that I watched him paint, and I just remember this old Japanese man, laying out. He had an assistant there, so it was like a nice studio, and big canvas, and he laid out the paint and then drew the big brush over it. And I thought it looked nice and similar to many of his other paintings, but he looked at it and just like, and his attendant crumpled it up, and then he went on to do something else. And so he was very attuned to the nuance of his paintings. That was a good day. Another highlight from that day was towards the end of the day, he said, "Can you help me download a new operating system on my computer?" And I said, "I don't know, but I can try." And so we were going through, those security questions, and came up the one, like a password security question. It said, "What do you want to be when you grow up?" That was a security question. And I think he's like 80 something or 90 something years old, and he saw this question, and then he was like, and he thought about it, and then he typed WRITER with a gleam in his eye. Yes. He inspired me. I stopped doing any activism after that tea with him that day. I'd been busy doing that my whole 20s, and he's actually an activist. He does a bunch of activism work, like all kinds of things. I was kind of burnt out on it, and yeah, he just lived with so much joy. It was, and he was making all kinds of things, writing and translating and organizing various projects and teaching and translating and writing poetry. And even as we were having tea, he would have ideas, or ideas would come out in the conversation, and he would write them down, and I had the sense he was going to make them. And he had so much energy. So yeah, just it showed me something about how to live, and something about how to create joyfully. For me, the message I took was be aware of all these issues, and respond, but do it joyfully, not anxiously, not ambitiously, not angrily, not stressed out, not all these things, not helpful. So anyway, is there anything that anyone would like to hear about? And I might not say anything about it, but I'm curious if the Sangha generally has any questions or feelings of something they might like to hear more about to weave into this talk. And take your time. Something simple.
Yeah. I have a question.
Yes.
Yesterday you read a poem and the word circumspect was used. What does that mean?
I have no recollection of this. Did I read a poem?
Was it yesterday or the day before?
Yeah, a house on four sides.
A house on four?
Circumspect, like a house with a house on four sides. From the Tao Te Ching, I think.
Oh yeah, neighbors on four sides. I remember now. Yes.
I just didn't know what the word meant.
Oh, circumspect. Maybe someone else. It kind of means thoughtful, basically, kind of like you, like noticing the details and alert to causing offense. Sounds about right. Circumspect. Close enough. Yes.
Maybe this is not simple enough, but I would like to hear about
I cannot comment on reincarnation tonight. And it's interesting. Now I'll probably comment on it the rest of the talk, but it's interesting people's different teachers' opinions on this. My own first teacher, who is deeply learned and practiced, he always, whenever anyone brings up reincarnation, he just says, maybe look into why you're asking the question, and he really thinks it is an unessential part of Buddhism, but there are other great teachers who adamantly say, if you don't believe in reincarnation, you can't really do this practice, and that all kinds of things. So since it's not in my own personal experience, on some intuitive level, it's been a meaningful teaching to me. It has been in my own practice meaningful to reflect on both orienting to the practice in terms of a deep appreciation of karma, and just the story of reincarnation was very inspiring to me. This notion that that death is not necessarily an escape, that careful attention to every action is the determining, and motivation is the determining factor of the direction of this kind of karmic evolution. That led to a deep carefulness in the present moment. And I think you could have that deep carefulness maybe without the story of rebirth, but the careful attention is what's important. And also this idea of, many arahants, fully enlightened beings, proclaim birth is destroyed, birth is destroyed. That's been a meaningful idea to me, and sentiment. One of my teachers, Joseph Goldstein, has a little placard on his desk or something that says, "Done is what had to be done." What do the arahants say? This something can profoundly stop within us. Or somehow deeply come to rest. Ajahn Chah talks about dying before you die. So I don't have direct experience of the process of reincarnation, but those ideas, both of a multiple life view and of the sentiment of stepping off, dying before you die, or ending this process of birth, have been deeply meaningful to me and helpful. Well, feel free to jump in at any time if you have other comments or questions, or other offerings. But I wanted to clarify this story of, remember I talked about someone, when you brought up scriptures, a famous monk who said that my breathing is my favorite scripture. Well, anyway, I did. And but I didn't so well. This person's name was Prajjnatara. Prajjnatara was Bodhidharma's teacher, an ancient great teacher named Prajjnatara. And the story, which I gave you in a muddled way before, is that Prajjnatara was invited to a feast by an Indian Raj. And apparently it's traditional when a monk is invited to a feast, to then give the Dharma, like read a scripture or give a teaching. And Prajjnatara did not do that. He just ate. And didn't recite any scriptures. And the Raj asked, why? Why aren't you reciting the scripture? And Prajjnatara said something very famous, which was this. He said, "This poor wayfarer, when breathing in, does not dwell in the 5 aggregates. When breathing out, does not dwell in the 18 elements of existence." So in other words, in breathing in and out, in breathing, I don't dwell in body and mind. And he said, I always recite this scripture and I'm reciting it to you right now. And I've been reciting it to you this whole lunch. So that's the story told properly. Yeah, it's nice. I've been reciting it to you this whole time. This beautiful dialogue of this reaching for the Dharma through scripture, through intellectual understanding, which is fair enough. And then this statement from an ancestor, I am the scripture. And how am I the scripture? I live not clinging to body and mind. The Dharma is not clinging to body and mind. So that is why I talk about this all the time. And the way that Prajjnatara expresses that is not dwelling in the 5 aggregates. Which is really just one of the multiple different breakdowns that the Buddha gave for this more specific detail of the body and the mind. And these are all things that all of us have already been being aware of throughout the course of a day of practice. Things like the body, this body of form, the breath, posture, sensations, its form. Then feeling tone, this really important aspect of the pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral quality of experience, which is really the doorway in dependent origination, the pivot between the possibility of freedom or not. If we can receive and know feeling tone mindfully, that's what can bring freedom. Perception and mental formations, the naming function of mind, concepts, all different concepts, labels, names, all the different mental formations, forms of thinking, images, emotion, moods, the whole psyche, and all the depth that entails. And consciousness, which here refers to sense consciousness. This teaching that if you, for example, in seeing, like right now, seeing, if you took away the eyes, the organ of the eyes, or you took away light and the forms, took that away, or you took away the attention or knowing faculty of mind, if you took any one of those away, you wouldn't have this experience of seeing. And the same thing with the other sense doors. And this is something to look into, this pointing to impermanence, to insubstantiality, to not self. This pointing to look at experience, look at this body and mind right now, any aspect of it, including our cherished thoughts, moods, concepts, even the knowing faculty of mind, and to clearly observe. or the senses, or the body, this body, my body. It's this invitation to clearly observe the Dharma. Observe in the present, here and now. Observe the changing nature, or the not-self nature. And this close investigation can stimulate letting go. Nothing whatsoever is to be clung to as I or mine. Statement of the Buddhas: whoever's heard this teaching has heard all the teachings. And it's that tendency that's being pointed to, this tendency to appropriate as ours what's not. Anything, even consciousness or this body, this mind, this tendency, this is me, this is mine, this is myself, this is permanent, this is a stable nesting ground. This is reliable. That misperception and that tendency and that view is what the Buddha was often pointing to as a source of bondage. Yes.
What is the substance of clinging?
What is the substance of clinging? Like what clings?
Yes.
Yeah. I see what you're saying. What's occurring to me now is there is nothing that clings. I don't know what that means, but yeah, but what is it that clings? That's a great question. I think in Tibetan, Buddhism, which I don't know much about, they say there's like a subtle soul drop that is what. But I always just think of it. Yeah, I always just think of it as like our spiritual being. Something deep in us, which can sometimes be experienced as contraction, and certainly plays out in intentions and motivations and actions and feelings and thoughts and all of this. What is that? What is it? What is that delusion? What is it that clings? Well, maybe that is there's nothing that clings. I mean, is this that there's no self? Really, it's only the delusion of someone to cling that creates manifestations of clinging. Maybe.
Or you said clinging clings.
Clinging clings.
Ignorance.
Ignorances. Yeah.
Ignorance.
Maybe, but if you clearly observe, then there's no ignorance. So there never was any. In reality, there's nothing there to cling. I don't know about what I'm saying right now, but that's what I said. In reality, there's nothing. In reality, there's no clinging, and nothing, and no one to cling. Did you just roll your eyes?
No. I wasn't rolling my eyes.
Yeah.
At you.
Rolling your eyes. I have this idea. I correct me if I'm wrong. I have this idea that you think that these reality teachings are kind of like out of the scope of what's practical. Is that just my own idea?
No, may I?
Yeah.
I was thinking of the Agana Sutta. Have you read that one?
No.
So it's basically the Buddha explains where the divisions come from of the caste system, and it starts at the beginning of everything. And basically, at the point of earth, there's a spirit over the water, and then a small cream forms on the top of the water.
Oh yeah.
And through its curiosity, the spirit makes contact.
That's right. Yeah.
And then it gains density and it gains form, and then blah 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 until we have humanity such as it is.
And they all start living shorter and shorter and shorter.
And so it's just that curiosity that creates that clinging, just that instantaneous touch.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I like that. It's kind of ignorance, this beginning of dependent origination, this impulse to wiggle from this moment rather than just be upright is karmic activity, and clinging clings. So we are cutting the chain. I mean, that is this practice, is cutting the chain, being upright, not wiggling, not meddling with samsara. And that stillness is the end of birth and death. Even if we don't believe in reincarnation or see that. It's the end of something cyclic and repetitive and wandering. I wrote down something else. I'm not sure what it's attributed to, but it was in Joseph Goldstein's book. I liked it. Forms, sounds, tastes. Okay. This is our experience. Odors, tactiles, and all mental objects. This is the terrible bait of the world. Like a bait for a fish. Yeah. Okay. Terrible bait of the world, with which the world is infatuated. So we have this bait, or this potential bait, every moment. And that's really the invitation of this practice, is to not take the bait. Then when one has transcended this, the mindful disciple of the Buddha shines radiantly like the sun, having surmounted Mara's realm. Forms, sounds, tastes, odors, tactiles, and all mental objects. Basically, everything that we experience. Body and mind. This is the terrible bait of the world, with which the world is infatuated. But when one has transcended this, the mindful disciple of the Buddha shines radiantly like the sun, having surmounted Mara's realm. So, this is an interesting statement to look into. I hope it is for you too. So this is an opportunity here to study this directly. And I've been pointing a lot to transcendence and shining like the sun, but I don't say that to overlook the first step, which is or the crucial step, which is be with this body and mind quite with just the right amount and way of careful attention, mindful attention. That's what we've been establishing. So to not take the bait of any object that's arising is a potential stimulus to wiggle. It's a potential prod. It's a potential hook to meddle with the moment, to cling to the moment. And we've been practicing this release. We've been practicing clearly knowing the present in the present with right understanding. This mindfulness, which is the key to transcend. And I would say, I want to offer that this is closer than we often appreciate. And the place where we're stopping is right here with whatever we find, even mental reactivity, desire, hindrance, so-called hindrances, emotion, tiredness, and this way of transcendence, this way of mindfulness, it is a wise, careful attention, but it also can be totally easeful. It's really, yeah.
I was still wondering if this profound generative awareness is within these aggregates, or I think sometimes I get this idea when practicing it that it's sort of, it's outside of it, so then this is me or something. So like,
yeah. So you have this experience of this profound generative attention, or this mindfulness, or something like it, and then you have this sense, oh, this is me, or you have this sense of where, and you're wondering, like, where is this located, or where is this?
Yeah, I think both at different times.
Yeah. Well, it's worth looking into and seeing for yourself. But this deathless element is possible to see, and it's possible that's what you're seeing. And that is that's a special consciousness that's not a part of the five aggregates. And but look and see, because it could be some feeling. Look and see, some feeling, or just the knowing faculty of mind, or some conditioned, fabricated mindfulness, which comes and goes. This unfabricated element, this deathless element, it doesn't have the quality of, it has no form, it has no color, it's not born, it doesn't die. It can't be found.
Would you say that it's the aggregates who are experiencing that in some way?
This is why I don't like bringing up this teaching. It's okay. I think something along the lines of it's kind of a misuse of the teaching to talk about the aggregates or what we are. It's more that these are these fields of experience which we can clearly know and let go of. I would say look at the get simple and look at the process very directly. What's important, about what's behind the question of, is this what am I, or am I this? And that's part of the realm of clinging, which is what we're trying to release, or what we're trying to see through. It's interesting with the teaching of the 5 aggregates. It's like sometimes it's compared to streams, these rivers of experience, of our experience, or sometimes it's like branches of a tree. And the idea is, it's not so much about like what we are. Are we this tree? It's more like when there's this clinging, the tendency is to cling to all of these or some of these more than others, and then that kind of shapes our whole sense of self and our whole life. And by looking at these directly, we have a chance to release, to have established the right relationship to these. And then they still are there, they flow, and we may also, in that release, have the perception or experience or taste or knowledge of this deathless element, which isn't a thing. It's just wisdom. It's the end of clinging. I don't know, what is that? What's the perception of that? Maybe it appears to something in our in what could be called the 5 aggregates, but the purpose of the 5 aggregate teaching is to let go. That's its purpose. Yes. So, just letting the words drift away, and returning to the simplicity of this practice. As one of my teachers liked to say, and I like to say to you, if it's not simple, it's not vipassana. If it's not simple, it's not vipassana. It's not clear seeing. We have this capacity to clearly observe that's deeply supported by simplicity. No need to figure out or stop figuring out. There's no need to do anything with this present moment. And in that non-doing, we are open to everything. Not clinging to anything. So we don't need to do not clinging. We don't need to do not clinging. But in a simple relationship to body and mind, profoundly simple. Profoundly simple. That's the letting go.